bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Today's Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? Now, I know what today is. It's November 22nd. It's the anniversary of the assassination of JFK. And, it should be solemn, sort of. I don't have that gene. But yeah. So, with that, our guest today is our good friend, my good friend, Jack Roth. He is here. And his new book called Killing Kennedy was released back on November 15th. Every year around this time in Dallas, Texas, they have a convention out there about JFK for JFK. And he just got back from that. So, and he's here with us today. And so we will be discussing the book, the legacy, John F. Kennedy. I was just a month old when the assassination happened. I was born in October, and of course, it happened on November 22nd. I was born on October 10th, so I was 6 weeks old, and yeah, I was alive. I was born, but I certainly don't remember anything. And my mom used to tell me about it, though, and. Kind of like, I think that memories that a lot of parents, will tell their children. But so I'm sure that my story is not a unique one because I've heard it too as well. But my mom said that I was in front of the TV in a bassinet, and when she got the news. And she said we sat there all day. So that's it, and growing up and hearing not only the stories and the specials and the things and the legacy and who JFK was. Well, that all came later for me in life, and I wasn't around. I'm only 60. I'm 59. So yeah. If you're 5 years older than me, then you've got a memory, right? If you're 65, then you remember JFK, you remember the assassination. But that's what we're going to do today with Jack. And then tomorrow is another Fader night with open lines. And we're doing that tomorrow because Thursday, taking the day off, I've got company coming over. We're going to be cooking and doing our thing. And but before all of that happens, I'm going to be on with Christina Gomez, Mysteries with a History, And we're going to do that on Thursday, Thanksgiving. So I'll see everybody there. All right. Tomorrow night's Fader night. Coming up, I will be hosting and emceeing the Conscious Life Expo. It's going down this February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton. Tickets and info right there. Link is below. ConsciousLifeExpo.com. 200 speakers, 200 vendors, special events. It's going to be an amazing weekend like it is every year. Tickets and info are below. You can get your tickets now. On Saturday, 2 weeks after that, Saturday, April 1st, 2023, I will be hosting the Parapod Festival right here in Southern California, in Valencia, at the Hyatt Regency. It's a live one-day podcast, awards, and film festival. It's going to be great. I'll see everybody there. You can submit your media right now at parapodfilmfest.com. The link is below. All right. If you're a creator, get your stuff submitted. April 7th, my throat is dry. It's fine, though. It just needs more coffee. April 7th through the 14th, 2023, I will be hosting and presenting on the Hidden Secrets Seminar at Sea Cruise. Yeah, long list of presenters. You can just go and click on the link below and see everything. Go on the cruise. Hang out with me. It's going to be awesome. Departs out of L.A., goes down to Mexico, turns around, comes back. All right, so I'll see everybody there. April 7th through the 14th. All right, now links for everything that I do are in the description box below. They're over on my website. They are in social media. So click, visit our sponsors, do all that stuff. Lots of events going down in 2023. And I'll be unveiling more and more as we move along. All right. I didn't make the shrimp scampi last night. No. I ended up making homemade chicken quesadillas. Tonight is shrimp scampi night, though. Yeah. See, I needed to get white wine. In order to make a good scampi, you need a fresh bottle of white wine. So I didn't do that last night after the show. I bailed on the idea, but I did it today. I am prepped and ready to go. So Renee, I was talking about my squeaky glasses, right? Renee sends me an email today. She goes, so Jimmy, what you need? You need thin wire frames. You need thin wire frames instead of the plastic. You need thin. Plus, you're going to look smarter. And I'm like, okay, I'm down for that. So maybe I can get rid of the squeaks. I have in-ear monitors, right? I have this whole system over here. I've got 2 pairs. Horribly expensive, by the way. And I just couldn't get those to work for me. But maybe I'll go back to, I don't know. I don't know why they don't sound good. Let's move on. Let's get to the breaking news. Artemis 1, NASA's powerful new moon rocket, damaged its launch pad and blew away elevator doors in the launch tower during its inaugural liftoff last week. Artemis 1, the first flight of the Artemis program, launched early Wednesday morning, November 16th. While the mission is otherwise nominal at the moment, the damage that was left behind is something that NASA is looking closely at to prepare for future missions of the Artemis program. The rocket was just too big, including the next planned one with humans on board. That's going to be Artemis 2, set to fly around the moon no earlier than 2024. Photos of the elevators for the servicing of the launch tower show crooked framing around at least one of the 2 lifts after the doors were ripped away by the shock wave that was generated by the SLS. It's just too big. It's too big. It's awesome. Have you seen the pictures? It's pretty cool. All right, now check this out. Ever want to own your own island? I remember when I was a kid smoking weed with my friends, and I was like, 14, 15 years old, doing bong rips before school. And, sitting around, you know what I would do, man? You know what? I would, if I had my own island, you know what I would do? I would make it illegal not to smoke pot. That's what I would do. And you can do that because right now, a group of Indonesian islands known as the Weedy Reserve is about to go up for auction in what could be the most eye-popping real estate sales ever to take place in Asia. The 100-plus islands, you heard me right, 100 islands in East Indonesia's Coral Triangle are spread out over 25,000 acres, roughly the size of Bora Bora. Indonesian law states that non-Indonesians cannot officially buy islands in the country, but there's a workaround. The Weedy Reserve does that by having the eventual owner acquire interest in point leadership. It's PT period. Is it point? It's PT Leadership Islands Indonesia, LLC, a holding company. From there, you, the new owner, will be free to develop it as you wish. Yeah, think about that. All right. Do we do Fate or Not Island? Yeah. I'm going to talk about Batman here in a second, too. It's pretty mind-blowing. Legalizing recreational marijuana. You can do it on your own Indonesian island, but it was also on the ballots in a handful of states for this month's midterm elections. Now, before Tuesday, 19 states and the District of Columbia and 2 other U.S. territories, I wonder what those would be, like Puerto Rico and Haiti. I don't know. Dominican Republic. I don't know. But 2 other territories had legalized recreational marijuana in some form. Now, Maryland and Missouri can join that list, bringing the total to 21 states where you can smoke pot. That's right. Meanwhile, Arkansas wouldn't want to live there. North Dakota wouldn't want to live there either. And South Dakota, nobody cares. Those voters rejected their state's legalization proposals. That's right. Is that marijuana, young man? Yeah, that's what you get in those states. A global panel of scientists and government representatives have voted to scrap leap seconds. That's right. That's it. Leap seconds are out by the year 2035. You don't even know what a leap second is. So let me tell you, the time adjustment is occasionally inserted to account for the gradual slowdown of planet Earth. That's right. That rotation slowing down has caused headaches for numerous tech companies over the years. The leap second was introduced in 1972 as a way to adjust coordinated universal time, otherwise known as UTC, roughly every 21 months. That's right. Every 21 months, inject a second. As these seconds are irregular and hard to predict due to the varying speed of the Earth's rotation, I didn't know that, they can disrupt systems that require precise timekeeping. So, Resolution D calls for UTC to go uninterrupted by leap seconds from the year 2035 until at least 2135, during which it's hoped that scientists can develop a better system for keeping atomic and astronomical timescales in sync. There you go. Now check this out. Crew members of the SpaceX Polaris Dawn mission are currently training for their orbital flight early next year, one that will see, for the very first time, the first private spacewalk in history. That's right. A private citizen is going to spacewalk. It's incredible. They're also going to carry out studies on the long-term implications of microgravity and radiation on human health. All right. Polaris Dawn and their SpaceX Crew Dragon craft are targeted for liftoff no earlier than March 23rd, 2023, from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. A private citizen spacewalk. Yeah, that's pretty incredible, actually. All right, let's get this show cracking. On this day in history, OTD, 1988, the Northrop B-2 stealth bomber is shown publicly for the first time at Air Force Plant 42, right up the street in Palmdale, California. Air Force Plant 42. That doesn't even sound like a real place. Now, this is what you do. Air Force Plant 42. Look it up on Google Maps. It doesn't sound real, does it? Air Force Plant 42. Pop it in. Air Force Plant 42. It's about that many. Air Force Plant 42. Yeah. Air Force Plant 42. Look it up. It's going to pop up right there in Google Maps. Go to satellite view, zoom in. It's a real place. That's where they got them alien bodies. Air Force Plant 42. Happened on this day in 1988. It's going to happen again in about a week. Yeah, 10 days. December 2nd. Pretty incredible. Right up the street. Fader fact. Oh, I was going to tell you about Batman. Australia. Batman. Here's your Fader fact. John Batman was the founder of the town that became Melbourne. That's right. Australia. You got to love this. And originally, he called Melbourne Batmania. I'm not making this up. There is still a street named after him there, too. It's called Batman Avenue. And that is your Fader fact. I bet you the people in Australia don't even know that. They need me, Jimmy Church, to give them that fact. It's pretty cool, huh? John Batman. I am Batman. Yes, you are. You're Batman. Today is November 22nd. It is the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Tonight, Jack Roth joins us. We're going to be talking about his new book. It's called Killing Kennedy. I have read it. And and the book was released and is now published. It was released on November 15th. The links for the new book are in the description box below, over on our website and throughout social media. So I invite everybody to read the book. It is a great read. Tomorrow night is Fader night. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It is Thanksgiving week. Tomorrow night's going to be a very special Fader Thanksgiving. Open lines all night long. And then Thursday, taking the day off. But Thursday afternoon, I'll be going live with Christina Gomez on her show, Histories with a Mystery. That's right. Or is it Mysteries with a History? She just flipped her lid right now. She's like, Church, go ahead. Watch. She's going to text me. Yeah, it's going to happen that fast. All right. Where am I at? So, check this out. You know the movie Stargate? Right? It's a great movie. James Spader, who plays Daniel Jackson. And you know the story, right? So, and one of my favorite scenes in all of Hollywood and Hollywood cinema is Spader. He's like at the Met. He's at some museum. It looks like the Met. It's not the Met because when he comes out, you can tell it's not the Met. It may be a hotel, but it doesn't matter. He comes out. But when he's doing his presentation on who built the Great Pyramid, I think that's the title of his presentation, his seminar, Who Built the Great Pyramid. So he's up there, he's talking about hieroglyphics, and he's talking about, the lack of hieroglyphics inside of the Great Pyramid, the age of the Great Pyramid. He brings up the Sphinx, and he brings up Colonel Weiss, and that he hoaxed, the graffiti in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. It's a great scene. And somebody raised, well, if they didn't, who did build the pyramid? He says, well, I don't know. And the room empties. It's a great scene. Now, Roland Emmerich and his co-writer, of course, it was directed by Roland Emmerich. They do a great job of Egyptian history. And they drop a lot of really good conspiracy bombs in there that we talk about all the time on this show. And, excuse me, there is a scene in the movie, and you've got to see it. It happens really, really fast. James Spader, you get to see a glimpse of his research materials, right? And there is a quick shot of some books on a table. And one of them is this. That's right. Egypt Before the Pharaohs by Michael Hoffman. And you see the book sitting there, and, they show one shot shows the cover. You see like half of it. You see you see, and then another shot, you see the spine of the book. But here it is. There it is, hardcover. And this is a rare book. It's out of print. You can find them. But here it is. Egypt Before the Pharaohs. And I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One, I just watched the movie, and like 3 days ago, and that first 30 minutes of the movie is so good. So anyway, that scene pops up, and I went, man, I got that book. That's right. So I go and I dig through my stuff and I find it. And I'm like, I just got back from Egypt. I need to go back and read this again. It's one of my favorite books. And I found out about this book because of the DVD of Stargate. I freeze framed it. This was, oh man, God, I don't even know. It was 20 years ago. Freeze framed it, got it, boom, and I was able to get the book. But that's not the point. The point is this. This morning, my phone rings, and it's an old one of my oldest friends, James Fox. I call him Pops, and he is nearly, not completely, but solely responsible for bringing me into the music industry. That's another story in of itself. But he calls me son. I call him Pops. He calls me up today and says, how you doing? I said, pretty good. He goes, man, I just want to talk to you about Egypt. I was following everything, and, Pops and I, we talk quite a bit, but I haven't talked to him since I got back from Egypt. So I was following everything on Facebook. Absolutely fascinating. Tell me a story. And this is what I went and got the book, and thought about this. I said, it's not the majesty. It's not the temples. It's not the Great Pyramid, Pops. It's not that. It's that it is so old. You're at places in Saqqara that are literally 5,000 years old. Abydos, 5,000 years old or older. And who was there before? The stuff wasn't just planted one day and everybody had these. Who brought this to them? And it takes me right back to this book, Egypt Before the Pharaohs. And I'll tell you why. Our knowledge of Egypt today, we take for granted because it's pretty easy. We've had 150 years of hieroglyphics, the Rosetta Stone, British and Americans and Italians and others going to Egypt and uncovering things and presenting things. And we think that we know the history of the pharaohs and the kings and the dynasty and the queens and everything else. We think that we understand this. And that's all there is to Egypt. That is clearly not the case. Egypt before the pharaohs is difficult. How do you piece that together? No writing, allegedly, nothing to represent, or do we have stuff there? There are examples in the desert of high tech and civilization going back 7,000 years, 8,000, but not as far back as Göbekli Tepe. So this, to me, this book and the ideas that not only it presents, but things that we really need to think about, right? Because it's not what we're taught. That's 150-year-old tradition of Egyptology. That's it. That's it. Colonel Weiss? Really? Right? And that's where it all started. And the dogma continues to this day. If you get a chance, get this book. I'm going to talk more about it. I'm going to go and give it another read through. I'm putting together a documentary right now on Egypt and my trip to Egypt. And this is what I'm going to cover. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It sounds like my voice is going. It's not. It's just dry. River Moon Coffee. RivermoonWellness.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is here. Today is November 22nd. It's the anniversary of the JFK assassination. We're going to be discussing his new book, Killing Kennedy, all that and much more when we come back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. I'll be the host and MC once again this year for the 2023 Conscious Life Expo, February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This is a 4-day live event featuring hundreds of speakers, exhibitors, and not-to-miss special events. Check this out. Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, Daniel Sheehan, George Norrie, David Wolf, Sean Stone, Danny Brinkley, Susan Slaughter, the Leo King, David Palmer, Scott Walter, and another 200 inspirational speakers. Special events include a disclosure lunch with me, Expo's Got Talent, hosted by me, a seance with Susan Slaughter, the George Norrie Forum, and the Leo King is going to DJ at a dance party. Over 200 exhibitors, over 200 speakers. It's the biggest event of the year. Tickets are on sale now at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. For everything you need, info, tickets, schedule, and speakers, please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Today, November 22nd, it's the anniversary of the JFK assassination. It's also Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Tomorrow's Fader night because Thursday is Thanksgiving, taking the day off. But tonight, Jack Roth is with us once again. This time around, we're going to talk about his new book. It was just released on November 15th. It's called Killing Kennedy, Exposing the Plot. Jack, of course, he's a journalist. He's a documentary film producer for J3 Films and a nonfiction book writer and author, I should say. He's produced many award-winning films, including the Extraordinary Film Series for J3 Films, which also includes Extraordinary, The Revelations. That's a really good one. Out of all of them, that's the one. That's the one. In Killing Kennedy, Exposing the Plot, the cover-up, and the consequences, Jack interviews researchers, scholars, eyewitnesses, and family members of those who were part of the tangled web of U.S. intelligence operations associated with the Cold War, and, of course, the circumstances surrounding the assassination of John F. Kennedy. In addition to Killing Kennedy, he's also the author of Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg and Unknown Down. You can go to Amazon right now and check out Killing Kennedy and Jack's other books. The links are below. And now I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Bel Air Jack Roth. Bella, hey. you knew I wasn't going to let that go. How you doing, Jack?
I had a feeling you weren't. I'm doing good, Jimmy. How are you?
It's not only is it great to hear your voice, but it's great to see you, my friend. And it's happy Thanksgiving. I hope that you and the family are ready.
Same to you. Yeah, as ready as we'll ever be. But yeah, it's kind of been a weird one because I've been so busy with the book and the promotion that I'm not in holiday mode yet. So.
Well, what's it like? See, the thing is, everybody, Bel Air Jack lives next door to Paris Hilton in Miami Beach, and a high-rise penthouse on one of those strange islands. And so in living that lifestyle, do you guys get the holiday vibe down there?
It's warm down here.
Yeah.
So, in November, it stays about 80, 78, 75, 80 degrees,
So what do you do to get in the spirit? What do you do?
It's not go for a swim.
Go for a swim. No fake snow, nothing like that.
No, we enjoy the food. Food is good whether it's hot or cold. So, being with friends and family, listen, you're cracking me up. Like, the whole story of the Bel Air thing. You really thought I was from Bel Air. That was the funniest thing, and I learned that's a compliment, so that's a good thing.
It is. And you know what? 20 years from now, we'll be on some island in Fiji with glass floors, kicking back with cocktails with umbrellas, and we'll share the story about Bel Air Jack and how it happened. But here, do you have fake snow holiday decorations?
No,
you don't even do that.
No. Oh yeah, for Christmas, a Christmas tree. They have holiday lights down here.
Okay.
We do the whole thing, and most people don't bother with the fake snow. It's too much work. It's too much cleanup.
I used to work for a company called Elisa's, and we had this fantastic Christmas party every year. We bring in a huge circus tent, like giant circus tent, and put it up in the parking lot, right? And we bring in, big bands, A-list bands, and the best food and everything. And one year, I couldn't believe it. This is in Culver City, California, everybody. Okay, Culver City. One year, they fake snowed the parking lot. They brought in snow machines, like 2-3 feet of snow, and I couldn't believe it. All the cars are out, the circus tent goes up, and they fake snowed. It was in Culver City, California. I'm like, how much did they spend on this? Oh, this is nuts. Yeah, they fake snowed it.
It's too much work.
A parking lot, man. A parking lot. They snowed a parking lot. It was, it's a little vain, isn't it? It's kind of a little vain. It would have been cheaper to fly everybody to Vail or something, right? And we could have had real snow. We could have gone to Aspen, flown up to Utah or something and saved some money. You just got back. The book was released back on November 15th. And today is November 22nd, of course. And you just got back from Dallas, right? And they hold that conference out there every year. Is the conference? Is it like DB Cooper style conspiracy theory, or what's the atmosphere there?
Yeah, it's a little different. We first met at a UFO conference, you and I. That was what we were working on, the documentaries. And I always felt like I've been to all, because I used to do the ghost conferences when I was writing the Gettysburg book. So I've been to that. Then I was doing the UFO conferences, and the Kennedy, this is my first time. Because the book just came out and I really wasn't involved in that community until just now. What struck me about it the most is, to an extent, this is the same in the UFO community, but I think even more with the JFK community, a lot of PhDs, a lot of really, really intelligent people, very intellectual. It's an intellectual pursuit. And a lot of the researchers, man, I'll tell you what, they dig. And I would say listen, I in the book, I talk about not every conspiracy is created equal. And the reason I did that is because there are differences. And I feel like if these days people say conspiracy theory is a bad phrase, it's a bad word, right? It's on a bad connotation right away. But there's a difference between, saying the earth is flat and saying that there was a conspiracy in the Kennedy assassination. These are different levels of, so I think with the Kennedy assassination, I think most of the general public believes there was a conspiracy. Even the House Select Committee on Assassinations in the 70s concluded that there was a probable conspiracy. So that it's really not a big leap.
No, it's not a big leap at all. You want me to tell you why it's not a big leap? Mm-hmm. Oswald didn't act alone. That's it. That's that. Number two, and this is it. This closes the whole case. If Oswald did it all by himself, then release the files. If you've got something to hide, if there's something more than that, then you're not telling us everything. And that is a conspiracy. That's it. It's that simple. Now, what level, who, the what, the when, I don't know. And there's a lot of great work that has been done on this subject, but it boils down to those two things. So, yes, was it a conspiracy? Absolutely. 100%. Did Oswald act alone? Impossible. Have they told us the truth? No. Have they withheld the facts as they know it? Yes. And what's the latest number, right? Isn't it 75 more years? Some crazy number that we have to wait?
Yeah, they keep pushing it.
Right.
Every president's supposed to release it, and they say no. It's a joke at this point. It's an insult to everyone's intelligence at this point. It's it's like Costner said in the movie JFK. It'll become a generational affair, right? It's just from one generation. Oh, we're going to hold. We're not releasing it. And when they do release it, 3/4 of it is redacted. So it's like the UFO documents. It's the same thing. What are they going to release?
Right. Same thing at the conference. I want to get inside of your head a little bit. Take me through that. Is there anybody at the conference walking around saying Oswald did it? He acted alone. Right? Is there anybody that walks around with that, that statement, or is it everybody just doing research and presenting their side of the case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think some of the people who go to the conferences, who might be their first time or they're just getting into it, might have a preconceived notion about that. They might be like, well, I always thought Oswald acted alone, because they'll remember some Dan Rather special or Peter Jennings special where they said they concluded that he could do the shooting. And that's the only thing they remember, and they don't have the time. They haven't had the time in their lives to really dig, which I totally understand. Not everyone can do a ton of research, but everyone who's presenting, anyone who's done even a nominal amount of research, minimal amount of research, is going to come to the conclusion, not only that Oswald didn't act alone, but Oswald didn't act. And that's when it gets really, really, really interesting.
How so? That's a broad stroke of the pen. What do you mean by that?
Oswald, what I've discovered in interviewing the people I've interviewed and doing the research that I had to do to prepare for the book, Oswald was a intelligence operative, perhaps low level, but still an intelligence operative, meaning the CIA used him. He was naval intelligence for a while. When he was in the Marines, he was at some point he was stationed in Japan, and they were working on the very highly classified the U-2 spy planes. It was all associated with that. Oswald was always on that path in the military to be an intelligence asset, and that's what's one of the things that has come out in some of the documents that have recently been released. Over time, more and more people have realized through these documents and through the research they've done that there's no question, it was obvious that Oswald was an intelligence asset. And when he was in New Orleans the summer before the assassination, so the summer of 1963, he was in New Orleans. Well, what was he doing in New Orleans? Well, he was sent there by his handlers, and he had a handler there, and he was doing whatever they told him to do. They told him to hand out pamphlets, right? For pro-Castro, or whether they told him to, infiltrate wherever he was going to infiltrate. It was all set up. He was being sheep dipped, and he didn't really know it at the time, but he was a patriot. He was following orders. And that's why, the whole idea of the horrible rifle that he apparently bought for $37 or however much it was, it just doesn't make sense. He wasn't that good of a shooter. He wouldn't have been able. One of the things you do realize when you're in Dealey Plaza, and you'll know this, and you realize how small it is, but you also realize how ridiculous it would have been if it was just him taking the shots that he did from that angle. Because there was also a tree that was in the way, and that tree's been there. And in that time, the time of year, it blooms in November. The leaves don't come off until the spring. So they try to make it sound like, well, it was November, their leaves were off. You could see, well, that's not true. It was the kind of tree it was that grows in Texas. But long story short there is that Oswald, really, no one could do that shooting. And he would have had a much easier, he should have taken a direct shot when Kennedy was coming towards him. Right. Yes. On Houston, but he didn't. Why did he wait? because it wasn't him. It was someone else as part of a team and an assassination group team of snipers. And it was a triangulation. And when you're in Dealey Plaza, someone told me this a long time ago. They say you can't really understand the Kennedy assassination until you've been to Dealey Plaza.
100%. 100%. 100%. Well, when you stand, you were just there. You were just in Dealey Plaza. I stood on the curb with my toes in the grass and my heels on the curb, facing the school repository, right? And you turn to the left, and there is the white picket fence. It was still, I'm assuming it's still there. It was there when I was there, and you know the grassy knoll. It's a grassy dent. It's not even a knoll. It's just like fruit, and it's right there. The overpass is over here to your left. The building's here. You're standing on and you realize right then how confined and tiny of a space that is. I mean, it's I don't want to say this in such a disrespectful way, but it's kind of like target practice. I mean, if you're going to set somebody up, it's going to be right there because you've got multiple angles and sides to do something, right?
Yeah, correct. And when you go behind, so you go to the 6th floor, you can't go to the window that's Oswald supposedly at. They have that. It's a plexiglass, but you can go to the window right next to it.
Yeah, there was like a diorama there. There was something there when I was there. But yeah, you're right. You can't walk up to that window.
But you can see it, and you can see the whole thing. And then you can go to the window next to it and then try to get a feel for the shot. And you see the easy shot on Houston. And then you see this very difficult shot once the limousine makes a hard left turn onto Elm, and it's a decline. It's also on a decline. So Oswald, it's a difficult shot, I would imagine. I mean, everyone I've ever spoken to who knows anything about shooting is a difficult shot.
Well,
but here's
check this out. Ken Priest just posted this before this gets away. He always felt that the shot came from the sewer. And now, when I first heard that theory of the sewer opening that's there on the curb, that was always pretty interesting to me too as well. But it could have been part of all of this. But that sewer aspect to me was always an interesting one. Nobody would have seen anything.
Right. But then they took that out. So now you can't really see where it would have been. It used to be there. And I know researchers who have actually jumped down into there because they, like I say, they go all out on this stuff. And it would have been an interesting scenario. But when you go behind the picket fence, and that was something I was really looking forward to. So they only have in the road that, as you know, they have an X marks the spot where the fatal headshot on the road happened, where Kennedy was at that exact spot. When you go to the grassy knoll and you go behind the picket fence, and I stood there, and I just stood there like this, pretending I'm a sniper. I could not believe how close it was, and what an easy shot it would have been.
It's right there. And when I went to the picket fence, there was like a dozen people back there doing the same thing.
Right? You can't help it.
Yeah, everybody was taking a look and looking down the hill, going, "Yeah, okay, yeah."
I mean, it's just common sense. But then so many people heard shots from there, and they saw the puff of smoke, and they saw the Lee Bowers, who was the radio guy for the whatchamacallit, the train station. He was in the tower, and he saw all these weird things going on in that parking lot. Now it's concrete. But it used to be gravel. So back then it was gravel, and you saw these cars come up, guys, and it was one guy had a walkie-talkie, and then there was a guy in a police uniform, and then there was another guy with a hard hat on, and this was like a spotter. So you had the spotter, the sniper, the actual shooter, and then you had other people who saw a transfer. The one guy who took the weapon, flipped it to someone who was walking the other way. The other guy who was walking the other way took it apart right away. I mean, this was at the highest level of professional hit. At the highest levels of military, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and there was so much commotion. And people don't realize, and this is psychological, when you're watching the president, you're there to see the president. So you're like waving, oh, there's there, and there's Jackie. People want to get a glimpse of Jackie. They don't necessarily see maybe who's hiding behind the picket fence, depending where your angle is and where you're standing. You may or may not see whatever you think you see, but most people don't realize it. And the people that did see, well, they had people there that were going to take care of that. Oh, I saw this. No, you didn't. No, I really did. I saw that. No, you absolutely didn't. And you'll never talk about it again.
Right.
They literally scared the crap out of people. I mean, this is what happened. So they had everything covered. But here's the thing that really got me. The minute Kennedy came down Main Street, made a right on Houston, and he was dead. And they had it it was a turkey shoot. And there was nothing left to chance. He was not coming out of that alive.
When I watch, I'm going to interrupt you so many times tonight. I can already.
It's all good.
Let me apologize in advance.
That's okay
for being rude. We were talking earlier today, and I was telling you how many times I've watched the Zapruder film, and I had gotten my hands on a stabilized, improved version of it, and had it on my heart, and I watched it over and over and over again. It's one thing to see it on TV; it goes past, or this, but and I just watched it and watched it. I wanted to understand what I was looking at. Now it's graphic. And when you watch it 100 or 200 times back to back, frame to frame, it gets to you. But when you I'm telling you, there's a shot from the back and there's a shot from the front, and I think that you can clearly see that in the Zapruder film. There may have been more, but there are two different reactions from the physics and the force and the velocity, and what happens when his head gets shot apart. And that's what I see. That's me, and I don't get the argument that it was Oswald shooting him from the back of the head. When you look at the Zapruder film, and you clearly see something different with my eyes. What do you see, Jack?
Oh, I see the same thing you do, and pretty much everyone else does. And we don't know how much they may have tampered with that film over the years. No one knows, and those are the tough things. So many years have gone by, but yeah, his head jerks back into the left, right, and you see it over and over. And you see first he's holding his throat, and that's the shot that came from the front.
Yep.
And all the doctors at Parkland Hospital said that was an entrance wound here and went out the back, or I don't even know if it went out. I'm not sure about what happened with that bullet. And then there was another, he got shot from the back. He did get shot from the back, lower in the back. And then he also got, and then the kill shot was the headshot.
Right.
From most likely the grassy knoll. Now, whether there was someone under a manhole cover, then that would have been an easy shot too, if they were able to get comfortable under there, right, and get a good position. So, but it was from that direction. So when you see that, but they try to say, and then listen, we all know the single bullet theory is the biggest bunch of nonsense ever. That's insulting.
Well, it is. It's insulting for a lot of different reasons too. It's not just one aspect to that. No, first off, second, to pass through Kennedy and do all that damage to Connolly, if I find that suspect. It's like one after another. But then the bullet just gets found in the hospital by an FBI agent later. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. And it wasn't damaged?
Pristine condition.
Pristine. You're bouncing off of bones and flesh and this and that. You are going to be a mangled piece of lead. That's just the nature of it. We've all seen spent bullets. You shoot a Coke can and, the bullets are damaged. It's really that. So shoot a watermelon, right?
Right.
So yeah, there are many reasons to sit here and argue about that. especially how it was found. That was the other. Oh, look. Oh,
by the way, yeah.
I just glanced down and there it is.
Right. Well, I tell people, I talk a lot about critical thinking in this book. And I kind of wrote it for young people. I wanted to make it easy to read. And I'll tell you more about what I wanted to do. But but it's an easy to read book. It's set up in chapters. Each chapter is kind of an interview with someone. But I tell people, I'm like, listen, I don't know if I was 10 years old or 8 years old or whatever. I was born 65. So I was born 2 years after the assassination. And I would talk to my parents about it. But the minute Ruby shot Oswald, something's rotten in the state of Denmark.
Yeah, and how and how they found him too as well in the movie theater.
Right.
That was strange. But okay, I need to take a break. We're going to swing back. I haven't done an actual JFK show in a very, very long time. And so let's just pick up where we're leaving off. Jack Ruby. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, this is Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, the one and only, our good friend Jack Roth, is with us. The new book, Killing Kennedy, is out now. You can go on the links below and throughout social media. We've got them posted up. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I'll be the host and MC once again this year for the 2023 Conscious Life Expo, February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This is a 4-day live event featuring hundreds of speakers, exhibitors, and not-to-miss special events. Check this out. Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, Daniel Sheehan, George Norrie, David Wolf, Sean Stone, Danny Brinkley, Susan Slaughter, the Leo King, David Palmer, Scott Walter, and another 200 inspirational speakers. Special events include a disclosure lunch with me, Expo's Got Talent, hosted by me, a seance with Susan Slaughter, the George Norrie Forum, and the Leo King is going to DJ at a dance party. Over 200 exhibitors, over 200 speakers. It's the biggest event of the year. Tickets are on sale now at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. For everything you need, info, tickets, schedule, and speakers, please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. And I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can right now get your own free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is with us. We are talking about his new book. It was just published. It's out now. You can get it. It's called Killing Kennedy. The links for it are below. You can head over to Amazon. Just search Jack Roth. And all those books up. That's why I'm wearing glasses tonight, so I can be as smart as Jack Roth. Theatrics, Jack, is half of the sale, right? And this, I'm wearing my Jack Roth glasses. Okay, now getting into this, the UFO connection to JFK, right? Now, it's not what you think. It's Fred Chrisman. Okay? Now, Fred Chrisman, who there's a character, Fred Chrisman, in Oliver Stone's film, JFK, Fred Chrisman. Okay? Fred Chrisman was also part of the first UFO sighting in history, Maury Island. That's right. Before Kenneth Arnold, before Roswell, there was Maury Island up in Tacoma, Washington. And one of the guys that was there, Special Agent Fred Chrisman. And Fred Chrisman brought the Maury Island case to the public, and his life crisscrossed across the United States, tangled up with J. Edgar Hoover, and was involved in the JFK assassination. Now, and what is crazy about that is, what are the odds? Right? What are the odds? What is the connection between the FBI, Maury Island, and JFK? Well, the answer is Fred Chrisman. And if you're going to have colorful characters of dubious backgrounds, right, how is it that Fred Chrisman is involved with both of these cases? And I find that completely fascinating.
Yeah, he was typical of really this intelligence agent kind of character, right? Where you think you might know something about him, and you really know so little about these guys. And they show up here, they show up there, they show up everywhere, and all these odd places and these odd times. And I think these guys are just doing their jobs like Oswald was. They were following orders, and whether it's for infiltration, misinformation, I think a lot of it's misinformation, but in the book, I don't go into Kennedy and the UFO connection from the standpoint of what Kennedy knew or wanted to know.
That's right.
But what I conclude when people ask me that, I say the same people who are covering up the UFO phenomenon, who have intimidated eyewitnesses to UFO phenomena, who have, stopped the, these documents from coming out and continue to keep us in the dark and misinform us, are basically the same people who killed Kennedy and are doing the same thing with that assassination. I mean, this is like deep, dark, above top secret kind of people. I say this: Kennedy was president of the United States. He thought he had a lot of power. He had power, but he didn't have real power. The people with the real power are the people who killed him.
Is that I have to ask this question, then we're going to circle back to Fred Chrisman for a couple of reasons. But do you believe, as I do, that every president, after the inauguration, right, and you go to the White House, you go to the Oval Office, and you sit down and you're putting out your pen holder, adjusting where the phone is sitting, right? Checking out the chair. And you're like,
adjusting it.
Right. I'm king of the world. Then the phone rings, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's your boss. Oh, what? I think that every president finds that out, that you're going to answer to somebody. And that will become painfully clear with your first visit to the Oval Office.
That is so. I'm so glad you brought this up, because that was never as true as it was, and I think Kennedy was that message, right? And at that point, they solidified their power. And someone said to me, they think that every president who comes into office, they force them to watch the Zapruder film over and over, and they say, that will be you if you think you're going to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Right. You think you're going to stop war. You think you're going to boom, 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 boom. I tell people this, I swear this is an incredible moment for me. When Obama took office, so he wins the election. That was a big deal. Everyone's pumped up. He's pumped up. He's, confident guy, great speaker. And now he's president, right? And so he goes into this transition meeting that they have. And I don't know if I think they do this with everyone. And there's a meeting, and so it's the old president and his people, and then the new president, and God knows who else is in there. So it's Bush's, Bush is in there. So there's this meeting, the transition. I remember Obama coming out of that meeting, and we didn't know what happened in the meeting. But he was seen, so they interviewed him after the meeting, and he was on TV or whatever. The press was there. He looked 10 years older. Terrified, and shaken to the core.
Shaken to the core.
I will never forget that as long as I live. And I said, what the hell did they tell him in there?
What did they say? Because he walked in showing his teeth.
Right. Yes. Right. He was all so it was a big deal. It was an amped up moment,
And he came out of that with his tail between his legs. And yeah. And let's back up. Let's go on during the campaign. There was a moment when the press corps, right, they've got a couple of planes, right, and flying around the country on the campaign trail. And somebody comes on the plane and announces to the press, Obama's not with us right now. They're like in the air. What do you mean? What do you mean? They take the press corps to the next city. Obama goes and meets with the Bilderbergs. And so does Hillary. And they were campaigning against each other. Right? And suddenly, and you remember, it was like, so Hillary meets with the Bilderbergs. She splits. Then Obama goes in. He splits. She drops out of the campaign, and she's made Secretary of State. Now, and of course, he gets elected. Now, conspiracy? Well, that certainly smells a little bit funky. And it was how it was announced to the press corps. You can go and historically read all of this and see how it went down. And that campaign changed instantly that day. And I'm convinced, man. Obama was okay. You're the next president. Hillary, we're going to make you Secretary of State. Don't freak out. Just relax on the campaign. He is going to be elected, and that's it. Let's make a little deal here, and that's how it's going to go down. And that's how it played out. And it's you stop and you think about it. That's where is this some twisted, the movie conspiracy theory playing out in real time? Well, you know what? I would say that the evidence, if you look at it, certainly suggests that. And I think that every president prior, before Kennedy, I think all had that Sunday go to meeting moment where they were told what is going on. And including JFK, which is back to your point, when he made that speech, secret handshakes and secret, agenda and secret societies and secret than the military industrial complex. I'm like, dude, what are you doing right now? What are you doing? And that's because he was told, he knew, right? He knew what was going on, and he said those things in public, Jack.
Listen, a lot of people say that both John and Robert dug their own graves. I mean, listen, first of all, when the mob helps you win an election, you don't all of a sudden return the favor by indicting mobsters. And that's what happened with the Kennedys. When Bobby became attorney general, he went after the mob, and they helped them win the election. That's just the way it was. I mean, Joe Kennedy was a criminal himself. Listen, I don't elevate Kennedy to sainthood in this. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I mean, John Kennedy wasn't a perfect man by any means, but the idea, it's puppet master stuff is what you're seeing going on. But I think Kennedy, and then with Bobby, they thought, we have power here. We can change things. And the lesson there was, no, you can't. And one of the things I learned in writing this book is that there's an elitism, very powerful people, and an elitist attitude where they literally grow up believing that they are meant to rule over others. They are meant to govern over others, and that this is the best thing for humanity because they're smarter, better, more well-bred, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you look at guys like the Dulles brothers, Allen Dulles, and all these people, the CIA director before Kennedy, by the way, fired him. Okay. And then he's on the Warren Commission, Dulles, afterwards. That's another, really.
That's a whole
I mean, every part of it.
See, and you know what? It's not only Allen Dulles, but it's Bush. It's Nixon. Yeah. Nixon was part of Eisenhower and what was going down 1960, 61, 62. You had that whole crew of guys, of which Bush was one, Allen Dulles was another, and Nixon was part of it. And they had stuff going on. They were dealing with Russia. They were dealing with Germany. They were dealing with Cuba. They were dealing with South America, and the military-industrial complex, and the mafia, and other things that were all happening at the same time. These guys had side deals, under-the-table deals, above-table deals, sideways things, politics, the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. It was all happening at the same time. This is not like conjecture. This is the reality. And if you go back and you read through history, Allen Dulles and Bush Sr. and Nixon, oh man, none of those guys were on the Kennedy team. None of them.
No. And they were horrible people. I mean, that's part of the book I talk about. I talked to a couple of psychologists, and I talk about the mindset of people like that. And it goes into elitism. So you're an elitist, but then you throw in narcissist, megalomaniac, sociopath, if not full out psychopath. I mean, these are literally some of the people you just mentioned. Let's throw Lyndon Johnson in that bunch.
Yeah, LBJ goes right. You know what? That dude was at the center of the wheel too, as well. So yes, LBJ. It was crazy. And so here's the thing. When we look at that, when the Kennedy family and, Camelot and it was almost like royalty might be the right word, but almost Hollywood, almost Cinderella, almost, you know what I mean? A fairy tale situation where it was just magical, right? And all of it came undone. The Kennedy brothers, the Kennedy family, the tragedy that absolutely fell all the way through. That it seems like it continues to this day. There's nothing. There was no happy ending to the Kennedys or their family.
And that's one of the big themes of the book, is why it still matters. And why it still matters is because everything changed that day. And the idea of American exceptionalism was a thing. And in the 50s, right when World War II ended until 1963, was American exceptionalism. When Kennedy was shot, from that day forward, American exceptionalism eroded and began to erode like a cancer, and has eroded ever since. So there is a direct connection between the Kennedy assassination 59 years ago. Next year will be the 60th anniversary of that murder. There's a direct connection and correlation between that moment in our history and where we find ourselves now. And you mentioned that, you say, Nixon and Watergate, it all, listen, the Watergate burglars, Frank Sturgis, these Cuban exiles, these guys that were E. Howard Hunt. I interviewed his son for the book.
That's right. I forgot about
all of Nixon's guys that were arrested in Watergate were all part of the Kennedy assassination. A lot of people believe Frank Sturgis was one of the gunmen. He was a mercenary. These guys were trained mercenaries, trained soldiers. They did not shy away from killing people. That was they were.
Can I ask you one question that as a young man, as a boy, we all do the same thing: cap guns, cowboy, the cowboy hat. We always want to do those things. You remember the rolls of caps? I can't believe those things were legal. So we always have had BB guns, Daisy, all that stuff, right? And it's part of growing up, and we all have a fascination with that and with guns and things. Okay, that's fine. But when I take my basic, very rudiment knowledge of firearms, I'm not any expert, but when I look at the bolt action, that rifle that he had, that he bought from the back of a Flash Gordon comic book or wherever he got it, whatever. I remember seeing the ad for it, right? And he orders it and it gets delivered. Is it possible? I've seen all the demonstrations of it, but I'm asking you, is it possible to pop off shots like that accurately, that quickly? I've never seen a demonstration to convince me that it's possible with sharpshooters, right? No one's ever been able to pull that off, have they?
And they have not been able to pull that off because they've tried. And here's the thing, and this is what's really interesting. So I was just in Dealey Plaza. I was fortunate enough to do a 3-hour tour of Dealey Plaza with researchers in the JFK community. But one of the guys who led the tour was a sharpshooter in the Army. And you can only imagine the things he was talking about. Right. He goes, first of all, the scope on this particular gun was defective.
Oh, is that true? Okay.
So as soon as the scope is misaligned or off, there's no chance in hell you're hitting anything. He goes, to be a sharpshooter and a good one, you have to practice every day. And you have to practice. He said that he practiced like 100, 200, 300 yards. And it wasn't shooting a paper target. It was shooting a lollipop the head of a lollipop.
Oh, okay.
These guys were trained killers. They can hit, but they had to practice. Oswald it wasn't what he did. They try to show, he was at a shooting range, but it wasn't Oswald. It didn't even look like Oswald. He said he was Lee Harvey Oswald. He made it sure it was like this. Hey, I'm Lee. Why would he do that? I'm Lee Harvey Oswald, but it wasn't Oswald. That was all part of the sheep dipping. But here's the thing. He was talking about, for a sniper, for a marksman, there are 7 factors that you have to consider, all within 5 minutes before the target you're going to shoot at the target. So there's a list of things: wind direction, humidity, temperature,
right,
slope. Now remember, Kennedy on Elm was a downward slope
and moving. Yes,
and there was a tree in the way from the position that Oswald was apparently in. So you have these guys. That's why there's a spotter, right? The spotter. And then you had the guy with the umbrella man, they talked about umbrella man. Why would he start pumping an umbrella? It was 65 degrees out that day, not a cloud in the sky. He's pumping an umbrella, and there's a guy next to him with a walkie-talkie. It's because he's entered the kill zone. This guy, if it wasn't eerie enough being there, the way this guy is describing it, as it would be, this is how it had to, this is the way the military operates. This is how sharpshooters operate. They had to get him in a triangulation. They had to do this. They had spotters. Earlier that morning, he showed us this mark. It was a yellow mark that was still on the curb. There was still a little bit left of this yellow. We're like, what's that? It wasn't a bus stop. It wasn't there was never parking there. It's a freeway. You know this. You were there. It's a freeway. Mm-hmm. It's a triple underpass. There's a lot of people today fly by. They're going by. They honk at the tourists that are standing on the red mark on the X, because someone's going to get killed doing this one day. Mm-hmm. So it's a working road. Mm-hmm. So that morning, they saw people painting on the sidewalk, not on the side of the grassy knoll, but the other side, spots of yellow marker. And him being a military guy and a sniper is like, those are kill zones. It could be 80 yards, 60 yards, 40 yards. Umbrella man, we're at 80, we're at 40, we're at 20, or shoot. And when you realize this, and I'm looking at the paint that's still there. And he also showed us one of the spots where a bullet, a high velocity projectile, hit the curb and, skirted off the curb. I have a picture of the bullet mark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there were way more shots than the Warren Commission said, 3 shots. So forget about Lee Harvey Oswald. Forget about that crappy rifle. Forget about 3 shots from this Mannlicher Carcano that was called the Widowmaker, because when they shot it, it would backfire and hit them in the head and kill the Italian soldiers.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, Adam Bicycle just said, disagree. 3 shots in 5 seconds is easy. No, I couldn't. Bam, bolt action.
Right.
Another look. That's 5 seconds right there. You haven't even shot the second shot. Okay.
And are you aiming?
That's what I'm saying. So by the time, that's 5 seconds. And point number 2, and then I'm going to post, I'm going to pop this up for, is this. I have shot a lot of guns. I've done a lot of target practice, and handguns, rifles, right? And semi-automatic. And even in a semi-automatic situation, I have never, now I'm not a professional, okay, but I've never been able to not have that recoil situation where the gun lifts up, right? Even you're concentrating, right? And I have shot until my shoulder hurt, right? I couldn't hear anymore. I'm just, and one thing that I have I've tried to peel off 3 or 4 shots at a target. You can't. The gun moves. You have to re-aim. And it is so difficult to shoot at a target at distance. and try to lay 3 shots, let alone a moving target.
Moving, right?
Yeah. And when we're talking about the angle and this and that and a bolt action gun, 3 shots in 5 seconds. No, and somebody.
But that's not the. Here's the thing. That's not the only aspect of this. And with due respect to the person who just wrote in, I get it. And you probably could get 3 shots off in 6 seconds, very hurriedly, not aiming.
Yeah,
certainly not
shooting in the air.
Right. Certainly not. Well, certainly not those kinds of precise shots.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But that's not the only element in this. There are so many. Let's not forget the fact that he was shot from the front. So this man who, and again, all due respect, well, you can shoot 3 shots in 6 seconds. Okay. It's really a moot point, isn't it? Because there are so many other factors to consider that it doesn't. Okay. So you can shoot, you can do it. But a lot of the sharpshooters who tried to shoot it accurately and do it accurately couldn't even come close. And they were way better shots than Oswald ever was.
Ever was. And I've seen those demonstrations. Before we get to the break, umbrella man, umbrella up, not dead. Next shooter, umbrella down, target dead, move on. I've watched that aspect of this. The umbrella man, certainly when you go back and now when you watch it and you don't know about the umbrella man, you totally miss him. When you know he's there, there's something happening with that guy. You're absolutely right. Umbrella up, umbrella down at that moment. And he looked like a secret agent standing on the side of the road, right? With an umbrella, straight out of like a James Bond movie.
Yes. And the guy next to him was also, I don't know if he was one of the Cubans, one of the exiles that was involved in the whole thing, but there were a lot, listen, and people ask me too, like, well, and I'm not, the book really isn't about pinpointing the specifics of who did it. It's not really, but when people ask, well, the mob might have done it, or was the mob involved? And that's really kind of simple too. If you think objectively and you use critical thinking skills and you follow the facts, follow the research, you realize that the mob and the CIA worked hand in hand during these times, especially during the 50s and 60s. The CIA used the mob to do things for them. And they would pay him or whatever they did. Right, kept them out of prison, whatever the deal was there. So what they would do is the mob were used to doing hits. Obviously, they hated the Kennedys. This is no secret. Jack Ruby was in the mob, heavily in the mob, heavy ties to the mob, and also knew Oswald very well over the years, and also was with him was seen with him in New Orleans the summer before. So again, facts. Critical thinking skills. What do you make of that? Right. So when people say, well, is it just the mob? And the mob doesn't work because there's no way the mob would have been able to contain the cover up. It needed to be more than just the mob. Now there could have been a mob hitman or two there. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Could they have helped plan it? Sure. Could they have backed it? They would have loved to have backed it. They wanted Kennedy dead. So that's not a stretch.
No, it's not. I need to take a break right here. We're going to pick up with, was it just the mob? That's where we're going to pick up when we come back after this short break. Our guest tonight, the one and only Jack Roth, is with us. His new book, Killing Kennedy, is out. The links for it are below. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. Be right back after this short break.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged,
change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch, roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Do you want to be an official Fade or Not? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fade or Nots. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is with us. His new book is out. It's called Killing Kennedy. Today is November 22nd, the anniversary of the assassination of JFK. It is something that, here's the thing, Jack, is we're going to pick up right? Was it just the mob? Where we left off. Do you think that we'll ever get these questions answered?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
I know that's a major bummer, but I think people need to do their own research and, again, be critical thinkers and know the truth on their own, right? Even if the government's never, why after 60 years are they still, right? Like you said, one president after the other, that's delaying these documents. And when you get the documents, I tell UFO and researchers the same thing. Don't get too excited. What do you think they're going to give you? What are they going to give you?
Yeah.
You know?
There's too much. I want to jump into the Mandela effect before we get back to just the mob. By the way, it's right here. Okay, I'm not going to let just the mob get away from me. There it is. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago on this program. And I was taking calls one night, and we're talking about the Mandela effect, and somebody calls me up and says, but how many people were in JFK's car during the assassination? I said, 4. No, there was 6. I said, no, there wasn't. There was 4. And now chalk it up to bad memory, to whatever it may be. But even after watching the Zapruder film a million times, for some reason in my mind, it was 4, right? Connolly in the front seat with the driver and John and Jackie O in the back seat. And then it turns out that there were 6. And so that's really not the point. But when I went back and started to look at this historically, like Life magazine, where they show the car, right? The car. And they've got this big double page spread of, and that's a 4-seat limousine. Now, is that a mistake? Did Life magazine make a mistake? I don't know. Clearly. So I went back and watched the Zapruder film. And I was like, oh, there was 6. Why do I have this number 4 in my head? But back to the overarching point that I'm trying to make here is that we all have different memories of this, right? Some people reported 6 shots. Some said that they heard 8. Some say that they saw flashes of smoke from under the underpass and flashes of smoke from the grassy knoll in the back thing. Some reported that there's all kinds of the eyewitnesses that were across the field that were looking at it from the opposite direction. They report a completely different scenario than what became the official version of this, which was the shots came from the repository from Oswald. And it's like everybody's got a different version of this story, right? And memory now, and we've got it on film, and it doesn't match up with the official narrative. You know, and that's my point. You know, every witness that was there, and it's a small area, has got a different version of how the events went down, don't they?
They do. And it's interesting, this ex-military guy who was doing the tour was talking about how witnesses are great, but you need more than eyewitness testimony. Can be really tricky. First of all, understand that you have a couple things going on. You have sensory overload. You're watching the president, so there's an excitement in the air. So you're watching the president and Jackie come down. You're focused on them. Then all of a sudden you hear noise. A lot of people thought they were firecrackers because in the human mind, they're thinking, oh, it's a happy event, firecrackers. And then it wasn't firecrackers. So it was gunshots. And then so everything all of a sudden becomes insane. And when you realize what's going on, then trauma sets in, right? It's not post-traumatic stress yet, but it's trauma in the moment. So I interviewed a girl who was 11 years old, and she was known as the girl in blue. And she was on a pedestal on the corner of Elm and Houston. And she was focused on, all she wanted to do was get either John or Jackie or both to look at her, to make eye contact. It's an 11-year-old girl. And she's in her school clothes. She skipped school that day. She convinced her mom after breakfast to take her. So she did. That's why she's girl in blue skirt. And she went from on Houston. She thought for sure that Jackie and John looked at her. And then they make the turn. So she's the happiest girl on the face of the earth. 5 seconds later, trauma for the rest of her life. Horror show. This is what people went through. So, yeah. And then, some people were ex-military. So they had, I know gunshots. So as I heard them coming from the grassy knoll. I heard them I heard 6. There's no way with everything that was going on that in that moment like that you can really, maybe be accurate about things like that. Now, you see what you see, right? I think that's a big deal, right? If you see a puff of smoke coming behind the grassy knoll, and which a lot of people did, 1 or 2 puffs of smoke, well, that's telling. And it's not to say that there weren't shots that came from the depository. There were. A lot of people believe there were other guys in there, and that they got Oswald the job. Remember, Oswald was given that job a couple months before. the assassination. So he's from New Orleans. He's ordered to go to Dallas. He's ordered to deal with these Cuban exiles. And over time, Oswald realizes it's like, okay, this isn't good. And there's a lot of people and there's a lot of evidence to sit towards this to say that he tried to stop the assassination, not only in Dallas, because he went to the FBI office and wrote him a note and they disregarded it. And no one could find the note ever after that. And then also in Chicago, which was, something was supposed to happen in Chicago. Oswald found out about it. And the thing, they got the Chicago field office got a phone call from a guy named Lee saying that there were Cuban exiles and others that were going to try an assassination attempt when Kennedy was in Chicago. Same kind of route, right? Motorcade. And they stopped it. They called it off. And it was, so there were motorcades in Chicago, Tampa, and Dallas. And they had to some extent something set up in each of those cities. It all depended on where it all came together.
Yeah. I didn't realize all of this. I did an episode for this on my TV show for History Channel. And we talked to different, I guess, witnesses or participants in each one of the cities to be a part of the show and interviewed them. And I didn't realize that. And when all of this evidence was brought forward, I thought, wow, okay, that was an aspect of this. If it didn't happen in Dallas, it was going to happen in Chicago. It was going to happen somewhere. I want to go back to Oswald for a second. He spoke Russian, right? Didn't he?
Fluently.
He was a fluent speaker of Russian. Spent time in Moscow, right?
Correct.
And so how does here's the trippy thing about him. Multiple countries, multiple cities, multiple jobs. Was obviously an intelligence operative. You are not as just some normal guy that's working as a janitor somewhere or whatever, that you're
stacking books.
Right. An international man of mystery. Right.
He's like all these other operatives. It's like Fred, that other guy, Grissman.
Yeah.
He I think it was Minsk where he was, but here's the thing about Oswald. He defected to the Soviet Union.
Right.
But he defected to the Soviet Union as part of a false defection program.
Right.
Under the direction of William Harvey from the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And they got these guys, a lot who were in the military station. They'd already been involved in intelligence work, whether it was with the U-2 spy planes or with it. Some people don't realize that Oswald was a really smart guy, and he spoke fluent Russian. And he spoke it so fluently that a lot of people in Russia thought he was Russian. And usually they know right away you can speak Russian, but you're not from Russia.
It's one of the most difficult languages to learn and speak. If you're not Russian, you're not Russian.
You're not Russian.
How good do you speak it?
Right, exactly. So Oswald goes there, and it was a false defector program. It was actually a double agent. And then, because here's what happens. So he decides to come back. He meets a girl, Marina, marries her, a Russian girl. And they get married, have a kid. I want to come back to the United States. You don't think that they would have detained him when he came back and questioned him for 3 months of a guy that defected and then came back, because they would have thought he was an agent for the Soviet Union at that point.
Point in time, at 100%.
Nothing.
That was one of the most difficult. He defected, man.
Right. He came back easy, no problem. Marina got in, no problem.
Yep.
They gave him money. I mean, he was an intelligence agent. Listen, and this is so obvious to. So one of the things, and it is important to mention this. One of the things that I try to do in this book, I knew I wasn't there was nothing I could do now. We've had some brave and courageous and incredible researchers doing this research for 50 years. Some of the people at the conference are well into their 70s. They've been doing this since the 70s. Even they were at the Clay Shaw trial. I mean, I couldn't even believe it, right? In New Orleans in 67.
68.
So,
That's where
68.
Fred Chrisman was a witness at that trial in New Orleans, which is where JFK trial takes place in Oliver's
JFK. Yeah. And there he shows up again, right? Like, who the hell is this guy? So, anyway, so what I knew I wasn't going to try to solve the mystery. What I wanted to do is create more of a people's history. I wanted to interview people who were somehow connected to it in one way or the other and present this broad kind of understanding, this modern day kind of understanding of the assassination and really why it still matters. So with Oswald, what I wanted to do, I wanted to create context around Lee Harvey Oswald that wasn't either a patsy or, just a patsy or just a lone nut assassin. I wanted to gather some insight on him as a human being. And I thought that was really important for people to understand, get a better understanding of this guy. And that's why there's certain people in the book that knew him, that I interviewed that knew him, one on an intimate level in New Orleans. And that was perhaps the most fascinating thing I've ever experienced, was interviewing her and talking with her. But what comes out is that Oswald was not this malcontent, communist-leaning lone nut. Oswald was a highly intelligent U.S. intelligence operative, patriot, loved Kennedy, was an avid reader, had dyslexia when he as a kid. He had dyslexia and he taught himself to read, and he was an avid reader. He'd read constantly. He was very well learned, and he was also very sensitive. He loved kids. There's things that people just and they betray him as this lunatic. They had to portray him as a lone nut, right? Same, it's always that, I always felt it was interesting that all these assassins had 3 names. Did you ever notice that?
I did, totally.
I mean, it's like, isn't that like a psychological thing? What is, like James Earl Ray. Oh, okay. All right. John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah.
Why don't they just have 2 names? Why don't they just have, I always thought that was weird, but anyway, I digress. I don't want to get in. That's just, that could just be coincidence, but listen, Oswald, people need to understand more about who Lee Harvey Oswald really was.
Now, let's break this down for a second. If Lee Harvey Oswald did it by himself, why does Jack Ruby kill him? If which goes back to the documents and what we know and all the investigations and Congress and the Senate and everything that was done. All right. If it was just one guy, what's the secret? Right? If it was one guy, Jack Ruby, at that point, having access, being allowed there with a gun, right, live on television, and is able to shoot and kill him? Why?
Right. Some people say, and this is fairly valid, I guess you can say this. Some people say that with Oswald, that he acted alone, and they had to kill him because they didn't want people to find out that he was actually a U.S. intelligence asset that was set up to be a patsy. Or what that was? I'm sorry, he was a U.S. intelligence asset that the CIA and specifically the FBI did not follow well enough and keep tabs of, because he had come back from Cuba on this thing, right? On this false defector program, or was a defector. And why the heck was this guy roaming around Dallas buying a gun? So that maybe people say that, but it doesn't hold water, because Ruby, again, this is from what I hear from researchers, is that Oswald was supposed to get killed at the theater. Okay. When that didn't happen, when he wasn't killed at the theater and they actually took him into custody, they activated Oswald last minute. It was like, they activated Ruby. They said, Jack, you got to go in. You got to do this. It was a self-sacrifice, whatever it was. They might've had something on him. Who knows? Ruby goes in. And when Lee Harvey Oswald comes out of the door in the basement of the police station, you hear a horn honk. I never heard this before. And when they told me that, you realize you hear a honk, distinct honk. Oswald's coming. Then right before he's shot, you hear another honk, a car horn honk. And is that shoot? That's the kill zone, whatever. And Ruby comes and first of all, Ruby walks right up to him and shoots him in the stomach. I mean, there's 8,000 police officers there. Yet Ruby is allowed in there, had a gun on him, but he walks right up and just shoots him. And then the official narrative on that is that Ruby was a fan of the Kennedys. He loved Jackie, and he didn't want Jackie and the JFK family to have to go through a trial.
And so 2 years later, he dies of cancer.
Right.
In the same hospital.
And a very aggressive cancer, the same type that they were experimenting on in New Orleans in the summer of '63 with David Ferry and Dr. Mary Sherman and Judith Very Baker and Lee Harvey Oswald. They were weaponizing cancer to kill Castro, and to do it in a way that it was somehow get it in his cigar or get it into him. And it was a very aggressive cancer. And they were doing these experiments in New Orleans at Tulane University, and the CIA had. The CIA infiltrated a lot of educational institutions to do "quote unquote" research. But what was that research for? If it was cancer research, oh yeah, but on the side, the CIA is working on something to weaponize cancer to kill Castro, because they were trying to kill Castro 8 ways to Sunday ever since the late 50s. This is known. This is a fact. So yeah, when you think about that, and then Ruby's dead, and think about what Ruby said. Maybe he would say, listen, if he spoke in a strange way, but he was like, if the people that did this knew that it'll never come out, they'll never let it out, and the situation I'm in. And so you thought he was speaking in riddles, but he's really saying is that, hey man, I'm just as much, I'm not a patsy. I did kill Oswald, but I'm a sacrificial lamb here. He knew that.
Yeah, he said that many times, and the whole, it seemed like that. Again, I'm just like everybody else. I have access to the same information. I've seen the same films, same documentaries. I've read the same books, your book, and so forth. It is, to me, so complicated and so planned, and the true definition of conspiracy, which is more than two people conspired to commit a crime, right? Well, this is a conspiracy, and it's so complicated, and it's such a crazy mess that first off, Oswald didn't do it by himself, but second, when you bring in the basic stuff, but you bring in Jack Ruby, is it because Ruby knows? He's friends. He knows who Oswald is. And he knows that if Oswald lives, he's going to start talking. And this whole thing is going to, he cannot live. And Ruby knows that he knows things, and he's not going to live either. Right. But that's it. And 2 years later, he dies at Parkland Hospital, where Oswald died and where Kennedy died. The three of them at the same time. It's just like, come on, man.
And again,
I don't want to play stupid here. I don't want to sound like some naive. I'm just saying this is what we're. And then you throw in Fred Chrisman and everything, and Alan Dulles and LBJ and the whole Eisenhower team from the late 50s and the mob and the Russians. It's
Listen, what people ask at the end of the book, I don't say anything definitively about anybody or anything. But when people ask me now who killed Kennedy, I say that the Cold War killed Kennedy. I say the Cold War and its cold warriors killed Kennedy. And that's true. It was the times in which Kennedy governed that got him killed. And he was trying to change things for the better. People don't even know the tip of the iceberg of the things Kennedy was trying to do. Détente with the Soviet Union and Khrushchev, joint space program, no soldiers in Vietnam, out of Vietnam by the end of '64, period. He had McNamara working on it. This was the plan.
Oh man, I forgot about the McNamara angle. Yeah, you're right about that.
So, it was all these things, and it's just when you look at it all, you realize in the end, it was these guys, former OSS, World War II vets, elitist, Ivy League educated, Yale, Harvard, blue bloods who ran the country, whose families were incredibly prominent, way more so than the upstart Catholic Kennedys, who were never accepted in the elite waspy blue blood world. Never. Right? Even though those people were just as much criminals as Joe Kennedy was. Right?
Everybody wants to talk about James Forrestal. And here it is, for God's sake, say something about James Forrestal.
Well, again, that's the connection of the UFO stuff. But Kennedy, I want to say Kennedy not only knew Forrestal, but he went to visit him, I want to say in the hospital or something like that. He knew. I mean, listen, Eisenhower and Kennedy had to interact, right? If for no other reason, from a transitional standpoint. So what was Eisenhower telling Kennedy, and what was he not telling Kennedy? What did Kennedy want to know about Eisenhower and what he knew? Right. And so now a lot of that speculation, it really is, because we know, I think, very little about that. But there's always a connection, because again, it was all part of it. Like even that was still the Cold War. Eisenhower's a Cold War. If there were UFOs in the skies over nuclear missile bases in the 1950s, right? You don't think that, I mean, that's all part of the Cold War. I mean, we had to make sure it wasn't the Russians. The Russians had to make sure it wasn't us. And were there crashed UFOs? And if they crashed, who's back engineering what kind of technology? And if there are treaties, who's getting what technology? So who knew that all that, this is part of that whole Cold War mentality, is we better get it before the Russians. That's all people. Yeah. Okay.
It was on both sides too, as well.
Right.
I mean, it was misinformation, disinformation, UFOs, especially at that time. That was a great cover. Now, it's not to say that there wasn't actual ETs in the sky. I'm not insinuating that. But as long as the public and the media was hyping up UFOs, it was a cover for everything that we were running secret at that time. And it was the same thing for the Russians. And as long as we could have the Russians think that it was UFOs and not us, that's a great story. Let's keep that running. I totally agree. And it was the same thing out of Europe and out of Russia. If you could keep the UFO cover story or excuse in the media and in the public eye, then you're diverting the attention from the stuff that you need to keep secret.
Yeah, and again, I agree with you. We're not saying, I mean, there were UFOs over missile bases doing these things. They were UFOs. They were flying at speeds. We knew we had to check it out, right? You have radar operators. Well, these craft are going 10,000 miles an hour. Well, we know the Russians don't have anything. We don't have anything close to that. So that was another national security threat. So you have the Russians as a national security threat. You have UFOs as a national security threat. And so then you have all what goes with that during the Cold War. The Cold War, you have UFOs, and then you have UFOs after the Cold War. But during the Cold War, they were just an added element to the Cold War. Add that to the paranoia of the Cold War.
Yeah, we did a whole film on this, Jack. I don't know if you remember.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, I know exactly. Right. We that's what we're talking about here. Right.
Whole film on this. Everybody can go check it out. Extraordinary, the revelations. Let's take a break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is with us. It is November 22nd, the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. We're talking about his new book called Killing Kennedy. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon.
Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. I'll be the host and MC once again this year for the 2023 Conscious Life Expo, February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This is a 4-day live event featuring hundreds of speakers, exhibitors, and not-to-miss special events. Check this out. Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, Daniel Sheehan, George Norrie, David Wolf, Sean Stone, Danny Brinkley, Susan Slaughter, the Leo King, David Palmer, Scott Walter, and another 200 inspirational speakers. Special events include a disclosure lunch with me, Expo's Got Talent, hosted by me, a seance with Susan Slaughter, the George Norrie Forum, and the Leo King is going to DJ at a dance party. Over 200 exhibitors, over 200 speakers. It's the biggest event of the year. Tickets are on sale now at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. For everything you need, info, tickets, schedule, and speakers, please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Go back, Lee Tappy. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is with us, film producer, journalist, author, and his new book is out. It is called Killing Kennedy, and the links for the book are below, and you can go to Amazon and pick up a copy of it. It is a great read, and today is November 22nd. It's the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. And I want to take, we've got 2 segments left. You're going to be doing overtime tonight, by the way. I'm giving you the heads up on that right now. As you, Oliver Stone just released another documentary, right, on JFK. And I watched it, and you can't help but come away from that without, I mean, you don't have to. The conclusion that you draw is that this is complex and it's wide, and there were, hundreds of people that were involved in this, and you get into other aspects of this, which is who was up and down the stairs in that building, who saw who. Who were the witnesses? Who saw who exit? How were things able to happen the way that they did? There's that part of it, and the escape plan, and then you get into the other side. What was going down on the street, and then the motions of things all the way through Dallas to the movie theater. Ultimately, a couple of days later, Jack Ruby, killing Oswald before anybody
could do anything about it. And it wasn't, didn't Lee Harvey have a black eye? Right. So anyway, so you have all of these things, and you as a journalist and going through these interviews and writing this book, what are you assuming now? Right. Do you take a look at this and go, you know what, I've got a pretty good bead on this. I've got a good read on this. I'm going in this direction. Have you yourself been able to come to conclusions?
Yes, but I hesitate. I come to my own conclusions, but I leave room for, because like you said, you asked, will we ever really know? Like, will we know who was in the sewer? Will we know who was behind the grassy knoll? Do we know exactly who gave the order to kill Kennedy? The answer to that is no, we'll never know that. But what you do is you take all the evidence you have, all the research, the good research that's been conducted, and you try to come up with a pretty well-informed kind of opinion that's, based on that you have no problem sharing with others. And I feel, yes, I am at that point. I felt like I had done a lot of JFK research before. And by the way, I did watch that documentary before I left for Dallas because it was part of a Q&A discussion that I was part of. But and it was fantastic. I thought it went, again, dug even deeper. I was like, oh my God.
Are you talking about Oliver Stone's
Oliver Stone's, yes. What is it called? JFK Destiny Betrayed or something like that. It was really good. And
I watched it back to back, actually. I finished it and I went, you know what? Wait a minute here. Too much to unpack. Really, really well done. And so I turned around and watched it a second time. But yeah, continue.
No, and that's the thing. I interviewed researchers, and I knew I was never going to do this. They, again, for years and years, and they focus on the Zapruder film, or they focus on the acoustic analysis, or they focus on the autopsy, or they focus on the movement of the body from Parkland to DC to blah, 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 with the coffin. And so they focus on specific things, and there's so much to it. And like you said, there seems to be hundreds of people involved. But what I wanted to do with the book is get, again, the idea of a people's history, and the themes that kept coming up for me were why it still matters, what have been the ripple effects, what the younger generations need to understand about the Kennedy assassination, and these kinds of themes that kept coming up. And I wanted to make it's a little more emotional than some of the other books that get into the details of the who and the how and even the why. This is more about people who have dedicated their lives or experienced it, or their lives have been affected by it, or they knew Oswald and had a certain, opinion based on knowing him. And it became more emotional. Every one of the interviews I did in this book became way more emotional than I thought they were going to be. And that includes for example, St. John Hunt, who's son of E. Howard Hunt of Watergate burglary fame. St. John's a super nice guy and an incredible, just a really cool guy. But he was forever affected negatively by the fact that his father was in the CIA and everything that happened. And I spoke to 4 people whose fathers were in the CIA during this time, during that part of the Cold War. And every one of them was like, it affected us. It affected the entire family. St. John and people like St. John and Peter Janney, whose father was Wister Janney, who was a high up in the CIA. They were talked about how their mothers and fathers were raging alcoholics. And the reason they were alcoholics because they were having to make these horrible decisions every day. The fathers were, right? They were doing these things. And how do you justify that? You drink. That's what people did back then. They didn't do cocaine. They drank. People drank. So they became, and the effects it had on the kids, and it was like the CIA family. And on the surface, it's the blue blood. They all lived in Georgetown. They all lived in these beautiful areas, right? And these, and they all were Ivy League educated, the top education money could buy. And they had a lot of money, and their dads were spies, right? They would go see James Bond movies because that was dad. And then reality sets in. the reality of what they were doing sets in and the cost of that. And that's what I wanted to capture in this book. And I wanted to take a look at a psychological perspective and a philosophical perspective on the assassination, because that's what's important now, isn't it? And Jimmy, you and I can sit here and it's such a great conversation, right? Who do you think was like, why, in the mob? And, what about Alan Dulles? And what was Oswald? All these really cool things. And that's what makes it such an incredible moment in American history and an incredible murder mystery to talk about. But in the end, it's about human beings. And there were so many people affected by it. And not only on an individual level, but on a national level. As a country, we're wounded. As a country, there's this black stain over all of us. And when you're in Dealey Plaza, I saw it. I almost felt it was palpable, this horrible stain on us as a country, where we could never be that great country again until this was somehow that we came to terms with what this really was and get past it as a country, instead of with all the cover up and the lies. Same with the UFO stuff. Lying, cover up, murder, intimidation, fear. That's not democracy.
Here, now looking back, I mean, for me personally, when you look back, I think that the 50s, I don't know about time travel or any of that, but you know what? If I could go back, I wouldn't go back to the 1800s. I wouldn't go back to the Middle Ages. I wouldn't go back to Egypt. I wouldn't do any of that. Too much disease and pestilence for me. But you know what? The 50s and the 60s, pretty awesome times, right? Pretty awesome times. And so you look back now with the lens that we have today in this messed up 2022 that we're living in. And you look back and what John F. Kennedy and Jackie represented, and how the country and the world looked at them as a couple, and as the president of the United States, and this thing, it was the look, it was the fashion, it was the thing, it was the image, it was the way that he spoke, and the rebel aspect of his approach to things, going to space, and we're going to do this not because it's easy, because it's hard, and the military industrial complex, these speeches that the change, and what they write, it was awesome, right? And so to have him taken in that fashion from the country at that moment, I can't imagine the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And him riding through that and standing up against to Khrushchev and the Soviet Union. We had nuclear missiles, man, in Cuba, right off the coast of the United States. We were at the brink of, right, and he was taken from this country. I can't imagine what the country went through. Everybody involved at that time, they're all dead, right? They're all dead. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. Nobody's right. 150 years old. Okay, they're all dead. So there's that part. Those that were alive, that are still alive today, you have to be 65, 70 years old today to go back. That means you were 5, 10 years old. You were a kid. So any of the adults in the room, 30, 35, 40 years old, they're all dead.
All
right?
dead.
We don't know. We only have the historical narrative to go on. And it must have been a wonderful time, crazy time, but a wonderful time for the country. And to have JFK taken, I don't know what the country went through. Now, I posed a question in the chat room. I said, who killed Kennedy? Right? And I did this a few minutes ago. I wanted to run I'm just going to go past these in rapid fire succession. Here we got Jackie got the kill shot. let's talk about this for a second. I have a friend, great researcher, that insists that the kill shot came from within the car, right? And going over this and over this and over this with me, and I'm like, but there are some out there like Brian, is that Keneally? That Jackie got the kill shot. This is a conspiracy theory that's been out there for a while.
Listen, I said before the show, and one of the things I wanted to make sure in the introduction of the book was that not all conspiracy theories are created equal.
Right.
You have every right to think that Jackie Kennedy killed him. It's, in my opinion, absurd beyond belief. But I don't want, here's the thing with researchers, they put a lot of time into what they do, and they get nuggets, right? They dig, they get nuggets. All of a sudden something becomes theirs. It's their theory. It's their thing. There's a lot of fighting that goes on in the JFK research community, just like the UFO community, and just like it's same thing. There's a lot of egos. These are really smart, intellectual people. Some people infiltrate. I think they're in it for themselves or in it for the wrong reasons. We all know that. But I think for the most part, you're talking about real intellectuals here who really care, and they dig, and they have personalities. A lot of them have strong personalities, right? And they're like, oh, here's what I think. And boom, Jackie did it. And now you own it. You own that.
Yeah, you do. You remember Bill Cooper? He went around for years with his video, and I went and I watched Bill's presentations on this, and I've seen the videos, and I'm like, I don't see it. But he repeats it and is so convincing in his presentation that you've got, hundreds of people sitting in the audience going, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
This went on for years.
Yeah.
Live radio, talk shows. So there you go.
And Behold a Pale Horse is one of the most terrifying books I've ever read in my life. It was really terrified me. I was absolutely scared to death after I read that book. And it was convincing. Listen, I'll tell you, David Icke is very convincing. He's really good at that. And I do believe he thinks a lot of what he says is true. I'm not saying he doesn't, but you get caught sometimes on what I call a conspiracy train. And again, I don't mean to disparage. I don't want to disparage, but it's his human nature. Okay. There are people just like the people that talk about Sandy Hook never happened. Oh, come on, man. People buried their kids.
Yeah.
And this is just my opinion. All right. And people can yell at me, and they can type in that I'm an idiot or whatever. But the fact that people would even think that Jackie was the one who had the fatal headshot, who did it, I almost think they're plants, they're shills. They have to be, because they just want to confuse people even more.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to get heated.
No,
but we got to keep it real here.
Yeah, Jack, you're right about that. And the other point to that is, the famous quote, I love, I'm going to paraphrase, but think up the craziest thing you want, and somebody out there is going to believe it. Yeah. So there you go. Okay. Next, the CIA killed Kennedy. Oh, that comes from Kevin Kennedy.
Distant cousin to John and Robert.
I think that there is a lot. Yeah. I think that there is a lot of evidence and different personalities out there that would say that the CIA definitely had a hand in this.
There's no question that most likely James Angleton had something to do with it, but it was Allen Dulles. Okay. Kennedy fires Dulles after the Bay of Pigs.
Yes,
because he lied to Kennedy. He said, this is a new president. He's young. We're going to paint him into a corner and force him to use U.S. troops and air support in the Bay of Pigs. Allen Dulles lied to Kennedy's face and said, this is what's going to happen. Kennedy was like, okay, fine. And then he realized he lied to him. And that's when Kennedy's like, you're not getting air support. I'm not bending. I'm not going to break here. And then he took responsibility. Shows you what kind of guy Kennedy was. He took responsibility publicly. He says, it all falls on me. I'm the president. Behind closed doors, he rips Allen. He's ready to kill Allen Dulles, right? He's like, you're gone.
Right.
You're gone. Now, Allen Dulles was an old school. There were a lot of Team Dulles was a very powerful team. Okay.
Extremely powerful team.
Extremely powerful people. And so he fires Allen Dulles and he's going to splinter the CIA into a million pieces and he was right, because the CIA was completely acting outside of the bounds of its mandate, which was to collect intelligence from around the world, to gather intelligence, not to orchestrate coups, not to kill people, not to do the most insidious, evil crap you could ever think of, which is why they were all alcoholics.
Now, wasn't his best friend was Bush Sr. too, as well? Allen Dulles.
They all knew each other. Bush was CIA all the way.
Yeah.
His father was Prescott Bush, who Allen Dulles knew, because Prescott Bush, he had a bank with this other guy, and they were helping before the war. They were financing the Nazis. They were helping finance the Nazis, and that gets back to this elite. This is what people need to understand about this country. Okay, you go back to the very powerful people who control this country, and you go into the World War II. So we're fighting the Nazis. Okay, before World War II even ended, communism became our enemy. We knew it was going to happen. We knew we were going to win the war. What did Allen Dulles do? And these other cronies and the Prescott Bushes and the George Bush Seniors and all these guys, they hated communism way more than they hated the Nazis. In fact, a lot of them, they kind of liked the Nazis. They liked the way they did things. They liked their propaganda. They liked it. They loved it. They were anti-Semitic as hell.
Right.
They were. Right. So they helped the Nazis. Operation Paperclip was much bigger than people think. People think of Werner von Braun, right? Oh, well, we took the scientists to help with NASA and the space races. Russians took some, we took some Nazi scientists. Okay, that's true. There were also tens of thousands of other Nazi party members that we helped escape to get out of Germany through the Vatican and Rome and get out into South America, Argentina, into the United States, in Detroit, where we had Nazi war criminals working at Ford factories, making cars.
Mm-hmm.
Ford was the biggest anti-Semite of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kind of liked the Nazis. They hated the communists. So boom, the Cold War starts. People don't understand that we helped so many Nazis escape prosecution and justice. Right.
And all those passports were created at the Vatican. That's
right. But we worked. The CIA was all in that.
Yeah.
And Allen Dulles was the biggest proponent of it. He's the one who operated that. He was in charge of that. So then you have these guys, again, elitist, control freaks, sociopaths in so many ways, Jimmy. You got to look at the psychology of it. Egomaniacal. Born and raised to believe they were meant to rule over others. And here comes
Kennedy, right?
Here comes Kennedy and the Catholic and and what he's going to pull out of Vietnam. Who does he think he is? We got contracts with Bell Helicopter and General Dynamics, and they're going to make billions of dollars on the Vietnam War that will happen. Just like we went into Guatemala in the late 50s, and and Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles owned huge shares of the United Fruit Company.
Yeah, I was going to say the American Banana Company.
That's right.
Yeah, let's before we get to the break, I want to get a couple of more of these in. What did he ask St. John Hunt? And he says, I go with the storm drain notion. What did you ask St. John Hunt?
I asked him things like, I said, tell me about your family life of growing up. What was it like to be a member of the CIA family? What was it like to be a CIA kid? And we started talking about that. And then I asked him, what it was like. And he talked about what happened with Watergate and the way his father acted. And then, a lot of not a lot of people know this, but his mother was killed in a plane crash. And what had happened is his father had given the mother money to get up to Washington, D.C. to give to payoffs because they needed to pay people off to avoid people from talking about Watergate. On that airplane, it was sabotage. There were other people on that airplane related to Watergate, and the plane went down. So St. John lost his mother, then in the plane crash, then lost his father shortly after that to prison because E. Howard Hunt did go to prison for a while.
Yes, he did.
So we talked about that. But then, of course, I asked about Kennedy. Of course, that was the point was, okay, Kennedy assassination. What did your father tell you? And he said, my father said he was a peripheral player in it. And he said, my dad said, because he was good with logistics. And his father had dealt with the Cuban exiles and the Bay of Pigs and all of that. That was all E. Howard Hunt was a coordinator, a lot of those guys. That was part of his team. So what he did in Dallas, they asked him if he wanted to be more directly involved. And apparently his dad said no, but he would do peripheral. So what that means is logistics, safe houses, airports. How do you get all the assassins in and out? Where do people stay? Where do they go exactly after they shoot? How do they get to where they need to get? Boom, boom, on an airplane out of Dallas, boom, on an airplane out of the country. And it could be a 2-month process. So E. Howard Hunt was really good at that. That was his thing. So and he said, yeah, I mean, it was a coordinated, it was the CIA and we had all these but E. Howard Hunt was always like, well, I was on the peripheral. Right. He never said, well, I was right in there with it. I was just a peripheral player.
Well, I mean, it's not solid, but it would indicate a conspiracy. That's it.
Correct.
At any level.
That's right.
If he's outside of Lee Harvey Oswald,
right,
then we have a conspiracy. Adam Bicycle says Lee Harvey Oswald. Right, lone gunman, and there you go. Let me see what else we have. This is from Zanzibar. He says the CIA military-industrial complex aerospace hitmen.
I don't know what the aerospace means there, but I would say absolutely CIA military-industrial complex, mob, foreign assassins, even that they brought in hitmen without question. Yeah. Can I say something to the guy who said Lee Harvey Oswald?
Sure.
Please do more research. Please understand when you realize what really happened, it was not Lee Harvey Oswald. And if you still believe it's Lee Harvey Oswald after you do a ton of research and you still believe it's him, then good. Okay, you have every right to believe that. But man, this man's he had 2 daughters that are still alive. Marina's still alive. And they've had to live with the fact that their dad was the assassin of JFK their whole lives.
I know it's one thing to stand at the repository window and look down, but isn't it interesting? I've only got 30 seconds before the break. When you stand on the curb on the X, right, and you look up at the window, that's a whole nother, right? You know what I mean? It just it feels it's close. It's not like it's far away, but it's the angle, and you start thinking about the car moving, and you're looking up at that. Man, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah. The Lee Harvey Oswald part of this just seems a little funky. Let's take our break. We're not done. No, we've got one segment left. Jack Roth is with us. It is November 22nd, the anniversary of the John F. Kennedy assassination. His new book, Killing Kennedy, is out. The links for it are below. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Jack Roth when we come back after the short break. Overtime is next.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
I'll be the host and MC once again this year for the 2023 Conscious Life Expo, February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This is a 4-day live event featuring hundreds of speakers, exhibitors, and not-to-miss special events. Check this out. Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, Daniel Sheehan, George Norrie, David Wolf, Sean Stone, Danny Brinkley, Susan Slaughter, the Leo King, David Palmer, Scott Walter, and another 200 inspirational speakers. Special events include a disclosure lunch with me, Expo's Got Talent, hosted by me, a seance with Susan Slaughter, the George Norrie Forum, and the Leo King is going to DJ at a dance party. Over 200 exhibitors, over 200 speakers. It's the biggest event of the year. Tickets are on sale now at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. For everything you need, info, tickets, schedule, and speakers, please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. And I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can, right now, get your own free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jack Roth is with us. It is November 22nd. It is the anniversary of the John F. Kennedy assassination in Dallas, Texas. And I've got to listen. I think that the point that we have made since the beginning of this broadcast tonight is that nobody knows anything. Right. We may never know. There is so much information out there, and you go and you start to, it's obvious. I mean, plain as day. Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone, and quite possibly didn't hit Kennedy with a bullet. I still don't understand how we can rest on that and just accept that narrative. It doesn't make any sense. And one of the reasons, and I'm looking at everybody's comments here and things, they're all over the place, as they should be. Jack,
well, as the people who did it want them to be.
I mean, it's just so much. We got Curtis LeMay is in play. Go ahead.
Well, Curtis LeMay, right? Because Curtis LeMay hated Kennedys. He hated John Kennedy. He hated the Kennedys. He was a war hawk. He hated everything that John Kennedy wanted to do. Horrible person, Curtis LeMay. You got to read more about him. But again, yes. So at what level?
The cigar, right? He was the
he was the cigar guy. But it's also the
guy. He was the nuclear missiles and let's bomb the world guy.
They wanted to wipe Cuba off the map for sure and kill Castro, and they thought that we had the first strike capabilities to have enough first strike capabilities to cripple Russia, so that even if there was a little collateral damage and maybe 10 million of us died, so what? We'd still destroy Russia. This is the mindset these guys had. And Kennedy was like, you can't kill millions. What do you do? Like, he couldn't even believe what he was hearing from his Joint Chiefs of Staff and some of these people. Operation Northwoods was a real thing. And it was a CIA. And the whole thing was to have a false flag narrative. Right. Blow open it.
Yeah. Yeah. Operation Northwoods. When people bring up 9/11, or, just Dr. Strangelove, right? Watch that movie. That's Curtis LeMay.
That is Curtis LeMay.
You really want to get down to brass tacks here. It's, you really think about George C. Scott. And anyway, that what Operation Northwoods was real. And that was signed off by the Joint Chiefs. That made it into the White House.
Yes. Kennedy couldn't believe what he was dealing with. I mean, you have to realize, and here's the thing. So was Curtis LeMay involved in the assassination? Well, there were closed door meetings. There are always closed door meetings. We have to agree on that, right? So there's, no matter what, there's always the Bilderberg group. There's all these groups of people that have closed door meetings. So let's say there's a couple of closed door meetings with that, and Alan Dulles is there and James Angleton is there. And they're like, John D. Rockefeller's there. And we got to get rid of this guy. Right. He's trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve. He wants to pull out of Vietnam. He wants to this. He wants to that. He wants to get rid of the oil depletion allowance, and all of our oil friends are going to lose millions of dollars. Got to get rid of this guy. Can we do it? Yeah, we can do it. We've trained to do this to Castro.
Listen, Jack, this is, I mean, for me, when these theories, it's a theory, right? When these ideas are put out there and people go, man, that's too crazy. There is no boardroom with a bunch of guys sitting around smoking cigarettes talking about this stuff. No, that's exactly what they talk about. If you want an example of this, go and look at Operation Northwoods.
Right.
These guys planned this.
Right.
They sat around and said, so we shoot down our own commercial airliner,
right?
And we blame it on so-and-so, and then we go bomb them into oblivion.
Right.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, yeah. Okay, let's go look at Operation Northwoods. If you ever think that these kind of dark minds aren't in operation. Okay, so Marjorie Hickey says Johnson, LBJ. Let's see. Zanos here says the CIA and the mob. Right? It's just all over the place. Ken Priest says CIA Bush. He meant Bush Senior. As the point man. Oh yeah, wait a minute. He comes back and says Bush.
That's awesome. Yeah, sorry, Senior.
Yeah. And if I jump down here, we have Terry's America says there is rumored to be a diary written by an aide to the Joint Chiefs who wrote that Curtis LeMay kicked it off by saying, "Gentlemen, this president's term." Have you heard about this? I haven't. Oh, his term is over.
It's over. Like, I could definitely see Curtis LeMay would say something like that. Listen, powerful men with huge egos, with elitist attitudes. And you asked a question when the segment opened. You said, why don't people believe that our government could do something like this? That's why I interviewed the psychologists. I wanted to find out. And they talked about something called cognitive dissonance. We're indoctrinated as young children in this country, whether it's through our religious institutions or our political institutions and American exceptionalism. And it's this idea of country as father.
Right. And
country,
when you have those blinders on, right? And evidence is laid out in front of you that contradicts this belief system, that it's not going to happen.
Springs start coming out of your head. You can't handle it. So you would rather just say, wouldn't we all? I would be a happier person if a lone nut killed Kennedy. I would be so much happier because I know that our government wasn't so damn insidious.
Yeah, I can still drive to work and pay for my health insurance, right?
Right. Listen,
make my mortgage payment.
But I get people like it's almost like how Archie Bunker was with the America and Meathead was the antithesis of that, right? So Archie didn't want to hear anything that would harm the American image. So cognitive dissonance is a real thing, and there are other psychological elements to this as well, and it's uncomfortable. It makes people very uncomfortable to think that Joint Chiefs, CIA, that there were certain people that had a real hand in this. All right. And that and the fact that they were so good at it because they were doing this all over the world.
They're doing it all over the world. And the other, when we bring in the idea of organized crime, it's not, you know what I mean? You can't have, our hands can't be involved in this. Kind of like the Bay of Pigs, if you think about it, right? It can't be us. We want this done, but we've got to, right? It's got to be on another layer outside of us. Jack the Lad says, Jackie looks pretty horrified, scrambling to get out of the kill zone. Definitely not Jackie. I agree with that. She loses her mind. Okay, now there part of some of the conspiracy theories that are out there is that it is clear that the limo driver turns around and pops off a shot, right? And I've looked at that. I don't know why people see that. I can see the limo driver is going to turn around and take a look. Right. There's gunshots and something's going down in the back seat. He's got a rear view mirror. He's going to turn around and see what's going on in the back seat of the car. He's the driver. He's a Secret Service agent trained to drive. And what is he going to do if something goes down? You train for these moments, right? So is that? Do you think that the limo driver was involved?
No, and I think that listen, and he turns around and people say, well, he stopped, he slowed down, and you're trained not to, and then he sped up and did what he was supposed to do, and they went to the hospital. But again, you're talking about humans, and the fact that he probably was like, what, like he may have slammed on the brake for a second, like what the heck, but here's the thing: when people say, well, then all the Secret Service, the Army, because they were involved with the autopsy, it's stand down. It's an order. It's an order that says stand down. It's an order that comes down that says Secret Service, this is how you're doing this. No one questions it. They follow orders. Stand down. There should have been a lot more security in Dealey Plaza that day. I mean, normally there's no way anyone would have been able to do anything that they did that day in Dealey Plaza. There's no way that even if Oswald acted alone, that he should have been able to get to an open window on the 6th floor to the depository. They would have had those windows shut.
It is so painfully obvious now. You would have thought that assassinations would have ended with convertibles after this, right? But the Pope ended up, they had to build the Pope mobile. That a state leader, and in this case, the president of the United States, but any, of any country around the world, riding around in a convertible is just a bad idea. And it's still crazy if you go and watch all of the films that are out there, because it's not just the Zapruder film. He was zigzagging through Dallas to get to Dealey Plaza, and you see the crowds of people, right? I mean, crowd standing on both sides of the street, and he's rolling through with Jackie in a convertible.
That's crazy.
It's way crazy. The Zapruder film was one. As a matter of fact, if you back up the last two turns he makes before they get onto Dealey Plaza, look at the amount of people on those two street corners. Thousands. I mean, right up on the limousine. No security. No. And when he pulls down Dealey Plaza, it's an empty street compared to what he just drove through.
Right. Elm was empty. For some, there weren't a lot of people down by the grassy knoll, and there was only it was the other street, right? Yeah. It was Houston that was packed with people.
Yes. Yeah,
but all these open windows, like they would never have open windows. They would never. There was no way. Everything about that entire motorcade was it was an operation. They were taking this guy out. The turns, the angles.
Jamie C says never heard the theory of Jackie doing it.
And no one ever should hear about it. And again, I'm sorry, I can't help it though, because it just muddies the waters. It's hard enough, right? You just said that. It's hard enough. There's hundreds of people that we could talk about. There's hundreds of different theories, and it's hard enough we'll never know because of all of this. We'll never really know the truth. We can have inklings on a higher level, but the nitty gritty, no way.
But she does have a book that will be published someday. I've heard rumors about that for a very, very long time. Let me scroll down here. I realize I've said this a few times. Depository, not repository. It's live radio, man. When I get fixated on a word, let's see here. I've got this. Did a fair amount of reading on the subject and came to the conclusion that the answer was all of the above.
It's awesome. Well, you know what? The better question, some people say the better question is who didn't kill Kennedy. And then I say, just to get people going, I'll say, I know who didn't kill Kennedy, Oswald.
Well, okay, so here we go. No, the driver reached back and popped him too. Yeah, I can go on and on.
It's great.
So I want to go back to your point, though. You just said it, and you said it about 15 minutes ago, that you don't think Lee Harvey had anything to do with it. I mean, he didn't kill Kennedy.
There's strong evidence to suggest that he did try to stop. So he went to the FBI office in Dallas, handed them a note. And the guy who he handed the note to had at first said, yeah, he gave me the note, and they said there was going to be some kind of an event, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Judith Very Baker was very controversial, but she was in New Orleans with Lee Harvey Oswald. They had an affair in the summer of '63. I won't get into we don't have time to get into all the details of that, but she knew him obviously at that time. He was sent to Dallas. She would talk to him on the phone. About 37 or so hours before the assassination was the last time Judith Very Baker ever spoke to Lee Harvey Oswald. And during that conversation, I interview her in the book. This is what she says. I have every reason to believe her. He said, he used to call her Judivsky, because they both spoke Russian. Her family spoke Russian, so she knew a little Russian. So that was his pet name for her. And he said, I don't think I'm going to get out of this alive. And they were going to meet in Mexico, and they were in love. Now, he was married to Marina, had 2 small girls, and this broke him up, especially the part with his kids. But he didn't love Marina anymore. Anyway, they were going to, she's like, meet me in Mexico. Just don't do it. Don't be there. Because when he was in Dallas for those couple of months, he was meeting with the Cuban exiles, and he started meeting with people, and he realized what was really going to happen. And then he was a smart guy. So then he's thinking, all right, I'm going to stop this, right? I'm going to tell the FBI about this. And, you know, he was following orders, but what they would do is they would tell people what they needed to know, not everything. So you had people doing what they were doing, not really sure what they were doing, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what he told her is, I can't go there. I can't get out of this, because if I do, they'll kill my family. And I've heard this from other people who were they would tell to do certain things in Dealey Plaza that day, that if they backed out, they would just threaten them. They would say, you're doing what you were ordered to do.
Which was to be a patsy.
No, they didn't tell him that. What they said was, you need to infiltrate the Cuban exiles. You need to infiltrate some of these in Dallas area. That's why they got him the job at the depository. And so Oswald is doing his thing, right? And then he realizes what's happening. He tells Judith, I have to stay, and because they'll kill my family. And if I stay, there will be one less gun pointed at Kennedy.
So what is his understanding of what he was staying for?
He thought he was going to be part of an abort team to try to prevent any kind of assassination attempt. But then when he realized it again, he's realizing, wait, why are they putting me here? Why are they giving me a job here? Why am I doing this? And then he's listening to what these people are saying, because he's trying to infiltrate. But what they're really doing is just setting him up to be a part of it, to be in that group, to be part of that whole thing. Right. But what they were doing is so you have there's a whole Cuban connection to this from the standpoint of the Cuban exiles. Oswald knew these guys. He knew them in New Orleans because he was part of what David Ferry was doing with training these guys. It was Operation Mongoose, right? They were going to go back in. They were going to have another Bay of Pigs, but this time they were going to overthrow Castro. So they were training for this. All right. And this is what David Ferry was doing. They were all CIA operatives. It was a CIA operation. So there were all these connections. So Oswald's piecing it all together. And then so he's telling Judith, he goes, listen, I have to stay. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have to stay and I have to see this through. But if I'm here, there'll be one less gun pointed at Kennedy. So he thought, what I take from that is that he thought he was going to try to stop it, that he was a part of this abort team. He soon realized at some point, and I think it was when he talked to Judith that he was figuring it out, that, oh my God, I could be a patsy here. And what did he say when he was arrested? I'm a patsy.
Mm-hmm.
He said it, right? Why would a guy, it's like people usually who assassinate someone, they're pretty boastful about it, right? It's like, I got him, like they're crazy. He's saying, I'm a patsy. I didn't do this. I want a lawyer, please. Someone represent me. And so anyways, so there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Oswald was truly set up, like he was literally on the ground floor at the time of the shooting. And there's a picture that a lot of people say is him. And he's standing there on the front steps of the depository watching like everyone else was.
Right.
So he couldn't have been on the 6th floor if he was down there. So, and then he realizes what's going on. He goes back to the boarding house. He gets his gun. He realizes now he probably calls his handler, a CIA handler. The CIA handler tells him, go to the Texas Theater. I'll meet you there. Why they setting him up? He goes to the Texas Theater, and the next thing you know, there's 200 cops there beating him up and arresting him. That's why he had the black eye. In the meantime, Tippit gets killed. They blame him for that. I don't know if he did or had anything. He might have been defending himself at that point, but it may not have been him at all. He's like, he goes to the theater. Meanwhile, now they arrested him for killing Tippit. They didn't arrest him for killing Kennedy.
That's right.
So on the way, and they said that's why. All I know is I apparently killed a police officer. I don't know why I'm here, right? So that was the whole thing there. And then like you said earlier on in this interview, why in the world how did they all of a sudden they all knew he was at the Texas Theater? Well, how'd they know he was at the Texas Theater?
That's right. The book is called Killing Kennedy, Exposing the Plot. It was released on November 15th. It's available on Amazon. We have the links below. Excuse me, Jack, fantastic conversation, my friend.
So thank you for having me on. This is always fun with you, man. I really appreciate it.
Jack, you're the absolute best, man. I'm so proud to call you friend, but the book is a great read, and I highly recommend it. And I'll tell you what, read the book, watch Oliver Stone's new documentary, and then everybody get back to me.
That's awesome.
I'm being serious. Jack, thank you so much. My best to you and your family. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Jack Roth. Now, the links for the book are below. It is called Killing Kennedy, Exposing the Plot. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What a great show tonight. Tomorrow night here on Fade to Black, it is Fader Night, a very special Fader Thanksgiving. That's right. Open lines are tomorrow, not Thursday. Thursday, I'm taking the day off. All right. Fade to Black is produced by MJ Palmer, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR with the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Fader Night, very special Fader Thanksgiving. I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.